Chapter 146, 7th Year, Superego. Saturday, the 1st of April, 1978. Watcher! Hello. God, cheer up a bit, sunshine. After all that effort I went to book a bloody audience with you. Sorry. I'm really happy to hear from you. Christ, you get posher by the day. Remus laughed, despite himself. The sound echoed back through the receiver, and made him think about Grant's voice travelling all the way through the telephone wire, from the very bottom of England, up through to him, into Scotland. Muggles were pretty magic too. How are you? He asked. Still enjoying the seaside? Winter was fucking dire, Grant replied, settling into the conversation. Remus could hear the cigarette between his teeth, the grind clink of a Zippo lighter. He longed to see the other boy, to see his face and watch his expressions. Rain, freezing cold wind, it comes off the sea, rattles the windows worse than that sent eddies. Mind you, the students made up for it. Students? At the art college, and Brighton Poly. You get loads of our sort at art school. I was seeing an engineer, a poet and a painter. Is that 3 separate people, or one very clever person? Remus asked wryly. Cheeky bugger, wouldn't you like to know? Grant snickered. What about you anyway? How's Loverboy? Remus snorted. Fine. Fine? Fine. Grant exhaled loudly. Lord, not another fight, is it? Tell you what, sweetheart. You want to get on top of these moods of yours. What moods? Remus frowned. Grant laughed. You're the moodiest bloke I know. Worse than a girl on the blob when something's pissed you off. And you haven't half got a mouth on you. I've had broken ribs hurt less than some things you've said. You never said. Nah, well, I let you get away with it because it's easier than picking a fight. Besides, it's not your fault. I'm the same, ain't I? We all are. Institutionalised kids. Institutionalised? It was an enormous word coming from Grant, but it felt rude to say so. God, Remus thought to himself. When did I become such a snob? Yep, apparently that's what we are. The poet told me. He was doing a course in psychology. Said I'm afraid to stay with one person too long because I was abandoned too much when I was small. Dumped him after that, obviously. I've been with Sirius for ages, Remus replied, defensively. It's only ever been him. Got the same problem, though, Grant mused, as though they were just passing the time of day. When was the last time you let anyone be nice to you, without saying something horrible back? Remus pressed his lips together. I don't do that, he said, though he already knew Grant was right. Bastard. If you say so, Grant returned casually. How's everything else, anyway? I met my mother. Crikey! Yeah, she's okay. That's what's got you all moody? No. Maybe. Wouldn't blame you if it was. I lose it for weeks after I see mine. Loves telling me how much he hates me. He always sounded as if he was smiling, even as he said this. It made it more unpleasant somehow. Well, mine didn't say that, Remus said. Actually, she said she loves me. That's nice then. Yeah. You don't have to say it back, you know. She dumped you, the callous cow. She got no right to expect it. Remus reeled back a little at that, shocked. She had her reasons. Anyway, it's not like I don't feel anything for her. It's just odd, you know, to say. Suppose your psychologist friend would think that's down to me being institutionalised. Suppose so. But you never had a problem with affection. Grant laughed again, a joyful cackle. If you don't reckon shagging every lad who looks at me sideways is a problem. I just meant you're more open. Remus couldn't go on. Grant's laughter was drowning everything out. Sorry, he wheezed. God, I forgot how funny you were. I thought I was moody. You're a complicated man, Remus bloody Lupin. So I love you. Remus groaned. Grant laughed again. Ah, don't worry. Not in a queer way. That made Remus laugh. And for a good few minutes after that, laughter was all that passed between them, through miles and miles of telephone wire. Remus walked back to Hogsmeade with a lighter step than he'd had an hour before. Just talking to someone outside of Hogsmeade, someone outside of the war, was a wonderful relief. I wish there was a phone at school I could use, he said apologetically. I'd call you all the time. When we're eccentric millionaires, Grant mused, we can pay someone to carry a phone around for us, everywhere we go. The engineer said they'll be able to do that, maybe by the 80s. I don't see how it would work, Remus frowned. Where would you plug it in? You're the one at posh school, you tell me. He'd promised to meet the others in the Three Broomsticks after the phone call, which had taken weeks to plan. Sirius hadn't said anything when Remus headed towards the phone box outside of town. Maybe a few weeks ago he'd have offered to walk with him. But they still weren't being nice to each other. They weren't being nasty, but they weren't being nice. It was tiring, but giving ground seemed like even harder work. Remus took a moment for himself before entering the pub. He smoked, leaning against the wall under the signpost. It was a bright spring day, and the first weekend he'd had in ages, which wasn't organised within an inch of his life. He watched the busy high street, happy students walking this way and that with their friends, shopping bags bulging and faces beaming. How different was he from them? Was he any less? Not to his friends, he thought confidently. Not to Sirius. Suddenly, he caught a familiar scent on the wind, and he searched the crowd quickly to find Chris, hurrying past. Oi, oi, Christopher! Remus called to him. The mousy boy stopped, saw who was shouting, then came over, a bit reluctantly. Hello, Remus, he nodded, looking agitated. He didn't have his usual bag of books, and his clothes were smarter than usual. He smelled slightly different, too. A new soap. Or it couldn't be cologne. Hiya, not seen you in ages. Remus smiled down at him. Yeah, been so busy, and then I had that cold, remember? Christopher didn't quite meet his eyes. He was blushing. But Christopher was always blushing, so Remus didn't put much stock into it. Oh, yeah. Feeling better? Yes, thanks. Come in. The others are all inside. Oh, no, sorry, Remus. I'm meeting someone. Oh. Remus looked him up and down again. Well, now it made a bit more sense. Who? Not anyone you know. Sorry, but did you mind? I'm going to be late. Of course, sorry, Remus said, a little bit annoyed. Christopher had never brushed him off like that before. He watched him hurry down the street and turn a corner. Fine. Remus stubbed out his cigarette in the pot of red geraniums on the doorstep of the pub, then pushed the door open and entered. James, Lily, Mary, Peter, Marlene and Yaz were sitting in a booth in the far corner, the table laden with empty glasses. He smiled, walking over to them, ducking his head under the low black ceiling beams and raising a hand in greeting. Mooney! James grinned, waving back. Peter and Mary moved along the plush green velvet seat to make room for him. How was your phone call? Lily asked brightly. Good, thanks, Remus nodded. What have you lot been up to? Planning the end-of-year party, Mary smiled eagerly. My folks said they'll host, James said. We'll invite the whole year, most of them, anyway. Sounds great, Remus grinned back. Things had been awkward between all of them, because it was painfully obvious that he and Sirius were fighting. Lily tried to be practical and act as if she was above it all, but James was perpetually caught between them and never knew where to look. Right, come and get them, Sirius suddenly appeared over James's shoulder from the bar, a tray of pints in his arms. He looked up and saw Remus, and the smile died on his lips. Everyone looked away, embarrassed, and Remus felt something harden in his chest. A stream of scathing one-liners flashed up in his mind, spiteful, sharp things. It took an enormous effort to push them down. He didn't want it to be easier to be cruel than kind. He refused to be that kind of person. St. Edmund's couldn't be all he ever was. "Higher," he smiled, lowering his head so that his hair fell into his eyes, and he had to push back the curls. He was such a mess, he ought to get it cut. "Hi." Sirius set down the tray with a clank. "I'll go back and get you. Remus can have mine," Mary said, getting out of the booth. "Samuel from my charms group has been throwing me looks all afternoon. Have my seat, Black." She nudged him into the seat, and Sirius gingerly sat down beside Remus. "See you later," Mary said, sashaying across the pub floor to a group of Ravenclaw boys. Marlene grinned and shook her head at Yaz, who laughed and squeezed her hand on top of the table. Remus's heart skipped, and he glanced around furtively. No one else was looking. Their little booth was in an awkward corner of the room, away from the windows and poorly lit by gaslights. No doubt the privacy was why they'd chosen it. Remus saw now that all of his friends were rosy-cheeked and glassy-eyed from beer. Lily was practically sitting in James's lap, and his right hand had vanished up the back of her jumper. "How was the call?" Sirius asked, neutrally, looking down at his beer. "Good," Remus replied quietly. "He sounded really well. Happy." "That's nice." Remus took a deep swig of beer for courage. Peter was talking Quidditch with Marlene and Yaz. James and Lily only had eyes for each other. He turned to Sirius, twisting sideways in his seat. "I'm such a prick," he said. "Yep." Sirius drank too, still not really looking at Remus, though the corner of his lips turned up as he tilted his head back. The flash of white skin on his neck as he swallowed caught Remus's attention. He budged up on the seat, closer to Sirius. "I'm sorry," he whispered, so that only Sirius could hear him. "I can't talk to you about anything sometimes without you biting my head off," Sirius grumbled. "You get into these moods and I can't reach you." "I know," Remus said, trying not to get too sidetracked by the way Sirius's Adam's apple bobbed, or the way his pulse fluttered in that hollow above his collarbone, or his lovely slender wrists, and how he'd love to hold them fast, and... Remus looked around once more, just in case, before leaning in even closer, pushing Sirius's hair back with his fingers and kissing that beautiful neck, flicking his tongue up just behind his earlobe. He heard Sirius's sharp intake of breath, and the blood rushing so fast in his veins it sounded like fizzing, and Remus's own temperature began to rise. "I'm really sorry," he said again. "It's my fault, and I'll do better." "Better," Sirius muttered. His head bowed so that his hair fell over his face. "Better. I'm sorry. I lose my temper when people tell me what to do. But I'm going to try." Sirius's head inclined towards him, and Remus pulled away so that they could look at each other in the eye. He wasn't angry or guarded anymore, which was a relief. "I suppose it's not really my job to tell you what to do in the first place," Sirius said, giving way so easily. He couldn't hold grudges, except maybe for his family. He was too good, inside and out. Remus felt another pang of guilt at that, and it fortified his resolve. He would do everything to change, to deserve Sirius's blind loyalty. "No, but I don't have to be such a dick about it," Remus countered, moving back a bit more and reaching for his drink. "I'll make it up to you. I promise." "Oh yeah?" Sirius cocked an eyebrow. All things forgiven, his mind had clearly returned to its usual preoccupation. "Later," Remus returned, giving him a light slap on the thigh. "So, what did Grant say?" Sirius settled back comfortably into the corner of the booth. The uncomfortable part over, his posture relaxed. He rested a boot against the nearest free stool, leaning forward on his knee. "Oh, We just caught up, Remus said, swilling his beer lightly. He's still working in Brighton, has his own flat, wants to get a car for the weekends. We could go there, after school's finished, Sirius suggested. If you wanted, there's time for a holiday. Maybe, Remus nodded, drinking again. None of them knew what would happen when school ended. Not really. Even James and Lily were hazy on the details. So I told him I'd hex his bollocks off if he asked me one more time, Yaz was just saying, Marlene giggling and hiding her face in her hands. You're awful. Well, he needs to learn a lesson. Who? James and Sirius both asked, neither one of them wanting to be left out of any gossip. Ugh, Lockhart. Yaz tossed her head haughtily, her ponytail swinging. Is he bothering you lot again? James frowned. I told him to stay away from my team. I'll tell Flitwick. Don't worry. He got the message this time. Marlene laughed. Yaz is convincing. What does he want? Sirius asked. He just keeps sniffing around, trying to find out what we're up to. James sighed, shaking his head. Reckons he's being left out. He's like more of a hygiene-conscious version of Snape in 5th year. Lily elbowed him in the ribs, which only made James laugh. Left out of what? Remus frowned. He doesn't even play. And he's a Ravenclaw. They lost the last game. Moony! Sirius exclaimed. Did you just demonstrate Quidditch knowledge? Everybody laughed at him, and Remus mock-sulked, drinking more beer. Hard to avoid in our bloody dorm, he retorted. Anyway, it's not the Quidditch team he's interested in. James shook his head, grinning. It's the other thing. He said this very ominously, eyebrows knit together, and casting suspicious looks around the pub. Ah, Remus thought. The prank. He hasn't asked me, Remus said with a shrug. That's because you've got everyone fooled, Marlene replied. The whole school somehow thinks you're the mild one out of this lot. Remus smiled at her very sweetly. Are you suggesting I'm not? He raised an eyebrow, grinning at her. Beside him, Sirius made a small, strained noise in the back of his throat. His pulse still hadn't quite settled down yet. Right. Lily stood up, draining her drink and wiping her lips on the back of her sleeve. We've got 2 hours before I've got to start herding the prefects back, and I need to go to Scrivenshafts before it closes. Potter? Yep, coming. James necked the dregs of his own pint. We both need broom polish. If you want to come, Pete, Marlene said kindly. Wormtail had been left out a lot lately. Even Dorcas was ignoring him. Great! He stood up eagerly, following James out of the booth. Black? Marlene looked at Sirius. Didn't you want new gloves? Oh, I'll order them from Quidditch Monthly, he replied, barely looking up at her. Suit yourself, she shrugged. There was a bit of commotion as they all got their things together and settled the bill. But finally, Remus and Sirius were left alone. Remus turned to him slowly, trying to look innocent. What do you fancy doing then? Walk? Honeydukes? When the dorm room is guaranteed to be empty for at least 2 hours. Sirius licked his lips. More like an hour and a half by the time we get up there. Better get a move on then. Oi! Remus smirked, standing up, hands in his pockets. I thought I told you I don't like being told what to do. They walked out of the pub single file, and Remus held the door open. As Sirius edged past him, shuffling sideways, he leaned forward subtly and whispered, You'll just have to tell me what to do then. Remus grinned. Chapter 147, 7th year, Night and Day. Friday the 28th of April, 1978. Remus! Remus! For fuck's sake, wake up! Piss off, Remus grumbled, shaken awake. It's the middle of the night. You're grinding your teeth again, Sirius complained. I can't help it. Go to sleep. Ugh! Between your gnashing and Prongs' snoring and Wormtail getting up every 5 minutes, How can I? Oi! A voice came from across the room. I have a nervous bladder. You shouldn't drink so much before bed, Sirius hissed back. Sorry, Mother, Peter retorted grumpily. I didn't realise you were monitoring my biology. You trip over dirty laundry every time you get up. Actually, it was Mooney's books. Not mine, Remus called. For the prank. All of you shut up, James yelled. They were quiet for a minute. Bloody wormtail, Sirius muttered into his pillow, rolling over. Great, now I need the loo, Remus grumbled, getting out of bed, his bare feet hitting the cold floorboards. He didn't turn the lights on in the bathroom, in an attempt to stay semi-asleep, but it was no good. By the time he'd got up, crossed the room, peed and washed his hands, Remus was fully awake, and his jaw hurt, so Sirius must have been right about the grinding. It was for the same reason Peter had been up and down all night, and probably the same reason Sirius couldn't sleep. Newt started next week. As he exited the little bathroom, Peter rushed forward to go in again, reaching for the panel of light switches on the wall as he did, and hitting the wrong one. Remus winced, feeling as if his retinas had blown out as startling artificial brightness filled the room. Wormtail, you prick! Sirius growled from the bed. Remus had left the curtains part way open, and the light struck across his face like a laser beam. Sorry, Peter said, hopping from foot to foot as he fumbled for the switches on the wall. I didn't mean to get that one. I can't wait until I don't have to share a room with you anymore, you little rodent, Sirius spat, sitting up. Don't you ever think about anyone else? Shut up, dickhead, Peter replied, sounding sleepy and upset. Think I like sharing with you and Mooney? What about me and Mooney? Sirius sat up sharply. Just go to the loo, Pete, Remus sighed, flicking on the bathroom light and then flicking off the big overhead bedroom light so that they were cast into darkness once more. Peter slammed the door and locked it. Silly little sod, Sirius grumbled to himself. Sirius, Remus snapped, in that authoritative voice that always worked. Stop whinging. Sirius pressed his lips together, falling instantly quiet, eyes trained on Remus. Good boy, Remus smirked. He rubbed the back of his head, glancing at the clock on Peter's bedside table. 3:30. I'm going downstairs. I won't be able to sleep now, he said, and you can have some peace. They'd been sharing Remus's bed for the past few nights now, and though it was large, it wasn't really meant for two fully grown boys. Unfortunately, they no longer had a choice, since Sirius's own bed had disappeared earlier that week. They'd been practicing for the prank, and hit a bit of a snag with the main incantation. Sirius remained cheerfully optimistic that it would show up, but Remus was less sure. He went quietly down the stairs, book under his arm. Remus loved the common room when it was empty. It was filled with some of his very happiest memories of Hogwarts. He went over and opened the big bay window. He was always too warm, and forever getting yelled at for opening windows to let cold air in. But no one was around to complain. Remus inhaled the scent of the forest and the castle, and the night sky, and the snow from the mountains, the velvety smooth water of the lake, and every blade of grass on the Quidditch pitch. Hogwarts. He wondered if he would ever feel so at home anywhere else again. Remus shook his head, realising how silly and sentimental he was being. He left the windows wide and turned back into the room, settling down on the big velvet couch and opening his book. He flicked his wand at the kettle hanging over the fire, and it began to heat up. He flicked through his book as his tea brewed, trying to find his place. Where would he get his books after Hogwarts? It was easy enough to join a Muggle library. But did wizards have them too? Another question for Sirius, or maybe Chris, when Remus next saw him. Christopher had been very elusive since they'd bumped into each other in Hogsmeade. Just as the kettle boiled, Remus's ears pricked at the sound of familiar footsteps descending the dormitory staircase. He smiled a secret smile to himself, and without turning around, simply summoned a second teacup from the cabinet, getting up, ready to pour. Thought you wanted to sleep, he said mildly, as Sirius padded across the carpet, wrapped in his bed blanket, and sat in the warm spot Remus had just left on the couch. Prongs is snoring still, Sirius yawned, pulling the blanket tighter as Remus brought over the tea. Bloody hell, it's freezing down here. I'll shut the window. No, it's okay. I'll warm up. Remus sat down with his tea, muttering Levio Liber at his book, so that he could read it with his tea in one hand and an arm around Sirius, who leaned sleepily against his shoulder. Will it be like this? Remus wondered, after Hogwarts. Nights on the couch with no one else bothering us. What are you reading? Sirius asked, watching the heavy book levitating just above Remus's lap. Oh, something I found on Legimency. Huh? Sirius raised his head, a small frown forming. Why? Just interested, Remus replied. Wanted to read something outside of minute core texts, and I thought, mind reading, cool. Who wouldn't want to? I think it ought to be illegal, Sirius said, suddenly prickly, though Remus didn't know why. It's an invasion of privacy. Practically a dark art. Well, I'm only reading about it, Remus said carefully. I didn't mean you would, Sirius sighed, settling back down. Seeing it had upset Sirius, Remus allowed the book to set itself down and stroked his hair gently, because he always liked it, even if he pretended he didn't. He felt Sirius relax against him, before saying in an odd voice, Sorry, I didn't mean to snap. It's just that my mother can do it. She's a Legiments. Oh. So she could find out what we were up to, where our loyalties lay. I'm sorry, Padfoot. Remus squeezed his arm. That protective feeling came back, cold and sweet like adrenaline. Don't be. I'm well shot of her, mad old bat. And I'd sort of learnt to deflect it by the end. Made her so angry. He let out a hollow chuckle. You learn occlumency. Remus raised his eyebrows. That's incredible. Not exactly. Sirius frowned again, but this time Remus knew it was because he was thinking very hard. He sat up, pulling away from Remus, and leaned over to set his tea down on the coffee table. It's more like you just learn not to think of the things she wants you to think. It got worse when we were teenagers, you know. She was worried about impure thoughts, toujours pure. So I'd just distract her by thinking about something else. So she wouldn't find out about Mary? Remus asked. Or the other Muggle-born girls? Sirius fidgeted with his hands, looking away. Yeah, that, and, well, whatever. Anything I didn't want her to know. Trouble is, you end up confusing yourself. It's like tying your own thoughts up in knots. It's hard to unpick. Afraid you used to get the raw end of that, a bit. He met Remus's eyes then, and he looked so ashamed and sorry, that Remus realised exactly what he meant. Was that why it had been so difficult in the beginning? Why Sirius had been so insistent on pretending nothing was going on between them? Remus put down his own tea and hugged Sirius tightly. He hated her. He hated the war, and he hated himself for not being able to say the right words. This was one of those times where it might have really mattered too. Sirius, he said, heart pounding as they released each other finally. It's fine, Moony. It's over now. Sirius smiled at him bravely. I know, but I really want to tell you. I want you to know. I know. Sirius kissed him gently, wrapping his arms around him once more and squeezing him back. Me too. Friday the 5th of May, 1978. I failed, Marlene whispered as they left the exam hall, wringing her hands together. You did not. Mary slung her arm around her friend's shoulder. Oh, at least it's over, Marlene sighed. don't. You're making me all emotional. Mary laughed. How about you, Lupin? She reached out to link her arm with his as the three of them walked down the corridor towards the grounds. Am I emotional? He asked, raising an eyebrow. How do you think you did? Mary clarified. I know you're stoic. Oh, okay, I think. The question on basilisks threw me a bit, but I think I managed. Stoic and modest. My dream man. Mary sighed. I have to go, Marlene said as they turned a corner. Sorry, I said I'd meet Yasmin? Mary finished for her, a bit cattily. She let Marlene out from under her arm. Off you pop, then. Moody cow. Marlene poked out her tongue. You know I love you forever. Back at you. Mary scrunched up her nose. See you at dinner. Bye, Marlene, Remus said politely. They were friends again, but it still felt weird. See you. Mary kept her grip on Remus's arm and looked up at him. You're not about to abandon me for a raven-haired Quidditch player too, are you? She asked. Honestly, it's like a club you're all in. Oh, shut up, he laughed. And no, he's got his Muggle Studies exam. So you're mine? All yours, he nodded. She grinned and kissed his cheek. They kept walking, heading for the sunshine. I think I mucked up on the bit about cockatrices, Mary mused. I couldn't ever take them seriously enough to study. I mean, for God's sake, half dragon, half chicken. Fucking nonsense. Still, I reckon I passed okay. I'm sure you did, Remus said. You worked hard. We all did. Worked harder when Firox was teaching. Mary grinned. God, me too, Remus replied casually, causing Mary to burst into giggles. He liked shocking her. It was hard to do most of the time. Mind you, she took everything in her stride. No sooner as they had turned the last corner, and she stopped in her tracks, a look of distaste crossing her face. Ugh, it's Rotherhide. Remus followed her line of vision. They were just at the final archway, which led out into the grounds. It was a sunny day, if a little bit cool, and after a rainy start to the year, every student not in lessons or exams was out enjoying the weather. Roman Rotherhide, the 7th-year Ravenclaw heartthrob, was loitering with a few of his friends just ahead. He and Mary had been on and off for years, and judging by the look on her face, they were most definitely off now. What's he done? Remus asked. Nothing, he just annoys me, she said. Oh, some days they all do. Boys? Wizards. Fair enough. Come on, let's just keep walking. Snog me, Mary turned to him. Go on, it'll drive him mad. Quick, he's looking. Mary, Remus laughed, veering away from her. No. Please. No. Ugh, some friend you are. Come on then, she grumbled. You're mental. Remus shook his head, following her. He sighed and slipped his hand in hers. There, will that do? My hero. She grinned up at him, squeezing his hand back, swinging it back and forth so that Roman was sure to notice. They settled underneath a large beech tree near the lake. Remus lay on his back with his arms behind his head, watching the branches creak slowly above, while Mary began to file and paint her fingernails. Sirius had made Remus promise not to start revising for anything else once his Care of Magical Creatures exams was finished, and for once Remus didn't argue. He was right in the sweet spot between full moons, where he felt the most healthy and human. Plus, lessons were finished forever, which meant he had no homework, and everyone was in a good mood lately. Why lock himself away in the library? God, I can't wait for it all to be over, Mary said. I'll miss all of you, obviously, but I'm done with school. Do you know what you're doing after? Remus asked, closing his eyes and staring at the bright red veins of his eyelids. Mum wants me to do a typing course, to get a proper job. You could if you wanted, Remus mused. You could charm a typewriter. Easy. I ought to. That'd show Mum. Anyway, I'll probably get myself up the duff and have to get married by the time I'm 19, like she did. Then it's cooking, laundry and church for the rest of my life. What a cheerful thought, Remus snorted. Lily said you lot were going to help Dumbledore, Mary said suddenly. Remus opened his eyes and turned his head, squinting up at her. She was wearing a pair of white-framed cat-eyed sunglasses, so he couldn't see her eyes, but her mouth was serious, no longer chirpy. That's right, he said. So, what? You're all going to finish school and go and save the world? Well, Remus said steadily, we'll start by winning the war anyway. Remus, please don't. He sat up then, annoyed. Why are you bringing this up? Because Lily's lost all sense of reason since she's been with Potter. Potter and Black think they're untouchable anyway, and Peter can't think for himself. You're the sensible one. No, I'm not. I think about the attacks at Christmas, Marlene's brother, the way people are looking at each other these days. I'm frightened. It's going to get worse. Yes, it is, he said, his voice hard. Unless someone stops it. But why does it have to be you? Any of you? Let Dumbledore fight if he's so powerful as everyone says. Why does he need kids to help him? We're not kids. Mary, this isn't about Dumbledore, or even Voldemort. It's about the whole wizarding world, the community, making it a place where we can all... Remus! You're never going to be one of them. Excuse me? Look, do you know why my family ended up in the UK? My granddad fought in the war. He got medals and all that crap. The gratitude of the Empire. They said they couldn't have beat Hitler without soldiers of the Commonwealth. You want to know what happened to that gratitude when the war was over? When he moved here for a better life? Do you know what they called him? She shook her head angrily. Things don't change because of stupid heroics. People don't change. Even if we win the war, even if that creepy Dark Lord bloke is imprisoned or defeated or whatever, Potter and Black might get the victory parades, but no one's going to... You're going to be an outsider forever. Look at the way Danny's been treated. Mary, Remus said, his tone very cold now. How had they got to this? They never fought. I'm not going to discuss this any further. Don't be angry with me, she said. I'm only trying to... I know, but I'm not interested. Remus, why don't we practice some charms? Exams in 2 days. He stood up, pulling out his wand. Mary remained seated on the grass. She looked up at him, lowering her sunglasses, her brown eyes reproachful. She pursed her lips, then gave a little shrug. Okay, just let me finish my nails. End of chapter 147.